We live in the age of fission now. We live in the age of fission. I have called this age that began primarily with the discovery, or with the invention more likely. I don't think it's anywhere else in the universe as far as science knows, that splitting the atom was very peculiar to this planet, that this is happening only on this planet because there's some brilliant minds like Fermi in 1932. He actually did it, but didn't know what the hell he had done. And of course, Marie Curie was involved in the research on radioactivity. She died of cancer, a form of cancer. And then in 1938, Strassmann Hahn went on to perfect the splitting of the atom and understand what it is that was going on, and the rest is history, as we have now the proliferation of what is the age of fission, of uncontrolled splitting of atoms everywhere on the planet in over 400 and some nuclear plants, 200 and some research facilities that every day add more and more of this toxic material that is contrary to our biology. It has nothing to do with natural radiation that is in the ambient environment for billions of years. It is in the earth. In fact, a lot of native tribes were very aware of what they didn't know was uranium deposits that were quite lethal to their well-being. And they just stayed away from these mounds of ordinary uranium in the ground. It created problems for them. Anyway, my last video was on fakes. And the nuclear industry is the biggest faker. The biggest faker. It's neither clean, safe, or cheap. None of that. And the biggest problem isn't really cheap, but it's clean and safe. It's neither clean nor safe. So we have incredible amounts of nuclear waste being produced every day by the biggest fakers in the history of fake. And I thought I mentioned, because I am an artist, I make paintings, and I'm thinking that, well, what's quite interesting to me is that if you look into art history, and especially recent art history, that you have a couple of people. One of them is called Joseph Duveen, who was an art dealer at the turn of the century, and Bernard Berenson, another interesting character from somewhere out in Lithuania. He changed his name. It was Valikovsky or something, and he became Berenson. He changed his name and lived in Italy, and he was the authority on Italian art. He made himself, in essence, because it was a vacuum, he filled a vacuum, and his wife was sister to the first wife of Bertrand Russell, which is interesting. I find the overlaps of people that know each other and are cavorting and all this, and Bernard Berenson and Bertrand Russell. And Bertrand Russell was a fanatic. He was a euthanasiast, what do you call that? He called for the elimination of most of the people on the planet. These types who are the elites, the oligarchs that function within our society. I don't know why we let them to say something as outrageous as there are too many people, let's get rid of them. I guess he didn't volunteer himself. They never volunteer themselves and say, well, there are too many. No, because they're oligarchs. They're anointed by the omnipotent being. Anyway, the fakers, the nuclear fakers are actually a continuation of what is history, and especially art history. And I want to just say that as far in my research, I read about Duveen and Berenson, and they cooperated with each other. They didn't like each other very much. There was a lot of tension in their contracts, and they had legal battles all the time. Duveen was in court all the time over millions of dollars in the early 1900s with the collectors and people that he was selling to. And here is the point about Duveen. This is admitted and a fact that Duveen hired forgers. So he had this incredible market opening up for him. He was I guess he was American, but lived in Europe. He had a gallery in Paris and London and New York, and he was supplying the art for the newfound wealth, this spectacular wealth that had been created in the new continent in North America with Americans. And you had the J.P. Morgans and the Fricks and the Bows and people that were collecting art and didn't have a clue. So they went to the person that was selling art. And American art at that time, if you're thinking about that turn of the century, Winslow Home, or people that were producing American art, weren't really of great interest at the time, because it's European art, it's especially Italian art. So you have Veronese, and you have Titian, and you have Tiepolo, you have these magnificent European artists, you have Rembrandt, but there's a shortage of work. So the faker Duveen, because the oligarchs in America were pretty stupid, they were just believing him. So he was supplying a lot of this artwork to these oligarchs, to these rich guys that didn't have a clue. And of course, they all created these magnificent museums, like the Metropolitan and the Frick collection especially. And I venture to say that a lot of that work, maybe as much as 80%, are fakes. They're not real. They're fakes. But people go by and they marvel at a Titian or something, or whatever or even a Vermeer. You're standing in front of it, and where did it come from? Well, there's a lot of monkey business, and Berenson was more than happy to supply his stamp of approval as the expert on Italian art. That, you know, the oligarchs were happy with getting the Berenson stamp on their painting, and they're very likely, most of them are all fakes, but of course they're not collectors of art, they're collectors of money. And when they collected the art, it was all with the intention to donate it to a museum and be tax-free for 3 generations. This is how it works. This is what they are. They're not passionate towards a discovery. There is this core group of people that are real artists, what some might call the volunteers, the people that are doing it for nothing. Got to get that, I guess. Anyway, my point really was this. This was my point about the fakers. That the world is not what it appears to be on every level. And obviously, the people that have half a clue understand that we live in the age of fission. I don't know why this has not come out in a definitive way. Well, actually, I do know, because if this is revealed to the general population that we are in the age of fission, we're not in the nuclear age. The nuclear age is the entire history of our planet for supposedly 4 billion years. That's the nuclear age. But age of fission is very distinct, because some dopes, some scientific dopes, they're not brilliant, they're dopes. They created this incredible mess, this toxic mess that we have to deal with now. And they're so brilliant. Yeah, the Einsteins, oh, how brilliant. Yeah, he figured it out, didn't he? Yeah, very nice. Anyway, what I wanted to comment on fakes, is that people that are still making their YouTubes and making their commentary and don't include this fundamental fact. And we can talk about a lot of topics. We can talk about many different things. But the age of fission trumps and surpasses all topics in terms of relevance. I'm talking about relevance. What's meaningful to me? What is it that motivates me to make a painting? And what I do in my own search, in the way I want to be as a human being, I want to be at the forefront of my thought process, my emotional content, my spiritual content, the part of me that is the best part of me. I want to produce that in some way. I don't want to produce some sort of schlocky, ugly crap that I say, oh, I don't really care about this. No, I'm interested in being of this time, in this moment. I want to be in this moment. What does it mean to be in this moment? And that's not being a fake. I want to be real with the work that I produce, and you may like it or not like it, but point for me is that I am the most, in my own sense, as a being, evolved to the point that I can be involved, which means I need to be in touch with what it is that I face on a day-to-day basis, what it is that is of meaning and importance to me, the most important thing at any given time. And for anyone to make monetary predictions or social predictions, or the predictors or the people that feel they have insight into anything, not to be able to identify this age, the age of fission that we're in, and include it in their commentary in some way, makes all their work, all their commentary, footnotes. If there is anyone going to be left in 100 years or 500 years or 1,000 years, however this will unfold, if there is anyone left, it'll just be, if it will even still exist, the commentary, the insights that do not include the nature of the age that we live in. It's like saying that if you look at the Greeks and the guy was swinging a sword that was made out of bronze, and then the Romans came in with their iron, kicked the shit out of the bronze and took it all over. It's like saying, oh, I don't know what the Iron Age is. Or the people before the bronze, when they were mucking around with copper, and then the bronze stuff is a lot harder, and there's this sort of understanding of the age we're in order to benefit and to be able to assist each other in being the best we can be. We need to identify the times we live in. And we live in the age of fission, as I have called it. I have called it the age of fission. Lonnie Clark's radio program, Age of Fission, the radio program, I was thrilled that she used that name because it is more of a public, it has more of a public front, which is what I want to do. I want to create through my work more of a public front of this awareness that I live with every day, that we're in the age of fission. And my work has to reflect that. And I'm working on these paintings. They're starting to happen. My Pacific paintings, they're starting to happen. And the Pacific Ocean is being destroyed. And the fakers on YouTube, and there is a lot of them. And there are a lot of attack artists as well. People that attack other people for sticking their neck out in order to make a difference, in order to make the world better. There is a whole contingent of fakers in the background continuously attempting to undermine the efforts by a few courageous souls that are willing to call this age out. They're willing to call this out, whether it's on the front of child abuse or whether it is the nuclear issue, which are probably the two biggest issues as far as I'm concerned. The fact that children are being abused in ritual abuse all the time. And where do they go? 2 million children are lost every year. So I've come out on this, I've said this, and I'm attacked for it. I'm attacked for it. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of fakers. And even in museums, when you think you're looking at a fabulous Titian, it's a fake. Duveen admitted he had forgers working around the clock, a whole bunch of them, producing the work for the oligarchs in America. So most of the American museums, and probably the Europeans as well, they're fake. And can you imagine, if you're an oligarch and you want to buy a Vincent van Gogh, if you don't have $500 million, you're not going to get a decent Van Gogh. They're not there anymore. Do you think they're going to put them in museums? Those Van Goghs are fakes. They're not gonna put up $500 million and have some guy standing that is supposedly watching them. Yeah, right. They're in vaults somewhere for whatever reason, which is stupid too. And if you ever look at some of those paintings, actually, they always look better in reproductions for whatever reason. I always like looking at catalogs more than some of these paintings. Maybe because the forgers and those guys used shitty materials, because it has to look like from 150 or 200 years ago or even more. Anyway, the fakers out there are plentiful, and if you don't raise to the frontal lobe, whatever your topic might be, your esoteric topic, your religious topic, your social commentary, political, financial, to miss this age, which drastically levels the playing field on all activity, like the Romans coming in and kicking the shit out of the Greeks with their superior weapons. The age of fission, it's not an age of weaponry, it's an age of toxicity that will totally level everything. And if people miss it, their commentary are merely footnotes in history.